In 2016, the CEO of one of the most iconic companies in the world was asked a simple question. Would Ferrari ever build an electric car? His answer was immediate, blunt, and completely unambiguous. He said, an all-electric Ferrari would be an obscene concept. That man was Sergio Marchionne, the man who had saved Fiat from bankruptcy, the man who had taken Ferrari public on the New York Stock Exchange. And he meant every word of it. Because for Ferrari, the engine was not a component. It was not a feature. It was not a technology choice. The engine was the soul of the company. The roar of a Ferrari V12 was the sound of Enzo Ferrari's entire life philosophy made physical. To silence that engine would be to destroy the very thing that made a Ferrari a Ferrari. And yet, 6 years later, Ferrari's new chief executive stood in front of investors and made an announcement that would have made Marchionne's jaw drop. Ferrari's first fully electric car would launch in 2025. This is not a story about an electric vehicle. This is a story about one of the greatest and most fragile business models ever constructed. A model so precise, so perfectly calibrated, so dependent on a single idea that one wrong move could destroy in months what took 80 years to build. This is the story of Ferrari. How a man who did not even want to build road cars accidentally created the most powerful brand on earth. How that brand became the most profitable business model in the history of the automobile, and how the company now faces a question that no amount of money, no amount of engineering genius, and no amount of racing heritage can easily answer. Can you electrify a Ferrari without killing what makes it one? Enzo Ferrari was born in 1898 in Modena, Italy. From childhood, his life was shaped by engines, by speed, by the consuming obsession with making machines go faster than anyone thought possible. In 1929, he founded Scuderia Ferrari. He was not building cars, he was racing them. Pure racing, no compromises. After winning a race in Ravenna, Enzo met the parents of a World War I fighter pilot who had painted a prancing horse on the fuselage of his aircraft for good luck. The pilot had died in the war. His parents gave Enzo permission to use the symbol. Enzo added a yellow background to honor his hometown. The prancing horse was born. The first Ferrari-badged car was completed in 1947. Enzo built it reluctantly for one reason only: to fund racing. Wealthy customers arrived at his door and waited for hours to place an order. Some were turned away. In every case, Enzo decided who was worthy of owning a Ferrari, not the other way around. This dynamic, which felt like the eccentricity of an obsessive genius, turned out to be the most valuable business insight in the history of the automobile. Demand would always exceed supply. Not by accident, by design. Through the 1950s and 60s, Ferrari dominated Formula One, accumulating 16 Constructors' Championships. Every victory was a marketing event. Every championship was proof that the prancing horse was not a symbol of luxury. It was a symbol of the fastest machines ever built by human hands. But racing is extraordinarily expensive. In 1963, Ford attempted to buy Ferrari. The deal collapsed over a single clause that would have given Ford control of the racing budget. Enzo walked away. He would rather lose the company than lose the racing program. Fiat stepped in instead, taking 50%, with Enzo retaining full control over racing. Ferrari's financial future was secured and the soul of the company preserved. Enzo died in 1988. But the philosophy he had embedded would prove to be worth billions. By 2014, Brand Finance named Ferrari the most powerful brand in the world. Not the most valuable, the most powerful, one of only 11 brands in history, alongside Google, Hermes, Coca-Cola, Disney, and Rolex, to receive its highest rating. And yet Ferrari was selling fewer than 8,000 cars per year, the most powerful brand on earth, fewer than 8,000 cars. Volkswagen was selling 10 million. Ferrari was selling less than 1% of that. And it was doing it on purpose. Ferrari's entire strategy was built on a single counterintuitive principle. always produce fewer cars than the market demands, deliberately, systematically, without exception. In its own IPO prospectus, Ferrari stated plainly that it pursued a low-volume production strategy in order to maintain a reputation of exclusivity and scarcity, and deliberately monitored production volumes and delivery wait times to promote this reputation. The financial results were unlike anything else in the automotive industry. Ferrari's gross margin was 45.5%, more than double that of any other major car company on Earth. In a business where manufacturers were fighting to stay above 5% operating margin, Ferrari was delivering nearly 3 times that. This is what Marchionne meant when he said an electric Ferrari would be obscene. He was not making a romantic argument about the sound of an engine. He was making a business argument. The entire financial architecture of Ferrari, the margins, the pricing power, the brand premium that allowed a company selling 8,000 cars to outperform businesses selling millions, was built on the promise that Ferrari represented the absolute pinnacle of combustion engine performance. The engine was not just the soul of the car, it was the foundation of the business model. In 2015, Ferrari went public on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol RACE. The market valued it not as a car company, but as a luxury goods house, its price-to-earnings ratio surpassing even Hermes within weeks of listing. Over the next decade, Ferrari walked a tightrope almost no luxury brand has ever managed. Between 2015 and 2024, revenues climbed from $3.2 billion to $7.2 billion. In 2024, it delivered just over 14,000 cars, not because it could not sell more, because it chose not to. The loyalty numbers are almost impossible to believe. In 2024, 81% of new cars were sold to existing clients. One collector owned 42 Ferraris before being selected to purchase a limited edition. The commercial director described the most difficult part of his job in 3 words: to say no. A 3-year-old LaFerrari sold at auction for $4.7 million, more than 3 times the original purchase price. Of the 10 most expensive cars ever sold at auction, 7 were Ferraris. This is the business the electric vehicle revolution now threatens to unmake. The challenge for Ferrari is not technical. By 2024, hybrid vehicles already accounted for 51% of Ferrari's unit shipments, up from just 2% in 2020. Ferrari built a dedicated e-building at its Maranello headquarters where electric engines, inverters, and batteries are designed, handcrafted, and assembled. The engineering capability is there. The challenge is something far harder to solve than engineering. It is identity. The European Union has mandated 0 carbon dioxide emissions for all new cars by 2035. The age of the combustion engine has an expiry date written into law. Ferrari's competitors had already committed. Bentley pledged 100% electric by 2030. Porsche pledged 80%. Even Lamborghini set a target for its first fully electric model by 2028. But something unexpected happened. Customers changed their minds. Aston Martin's chairman said demand for electric luxury vehicles was not what they had expected. Bentley's new chief executive said customers were rejecting electric cars entirely. Aston Martin postponed its launch by at least a year, and Ferrari's own data told a troubling story. When Ferrari launched its first production hybrid, the SF90 Stradale, used values spiked by nearly 1/3 in 2022. Just 2 years later, those same cars were selling at a 20 to 25% discount. In the world Ferrari had built, where owning a Ferrari was considered a financial investment as much as an emotional one, declining used car values were not just a commercial problem. They were a signal that the market's confidence in the brand was beginning to wobble. Ferrari's chief executive Benedetto Vigna announced the first all-electric model for 2025, committing that 40% of new models would be fully electric by 2030. But he knew the real question every Ferrarista was asking, not whether Ferrari could build an electric car, whether an electric car could still be a Ferrari. Ferrari promised the first electric vehicle would deliver a genuine Ferrari experience across all dimensions, including sound. Vigna used that word deliberately, because the sound of a Ferrari is not a byproduct of engineering. It is one of the primary reasons people buy it. It is not separable from the experience. It is the experience. Vigna described the balance in a single image. I like to say we have two eyes. With one, we look at the past. With the other, we look at the future. Innovation and tradition must coexist so that the DNA of the company can evolve through history. The scarcity model only works if what is being made scarce is genuinely desired. If customers decide that a silent Ferrari is not a real Ferrari, then Ferrari's waitlists will shrink. And when waitlists shrink, the scarcity premium shrinks. And when the scarcity premium shrinks, the used car values fall. And when used car values fall, the investment argument disappears. And when the investment argument disappears, the margins that make Ferrari unlike any other car company in the world come under pressure for the first time in 80 years. The entire financial architecture of the company rests on what happens when Ferrari's most loyal customers open the door of that first electric car, sit in the driver's seat, press the accelerator, and decide in the first 3 seconds whether it feels like a Ferrari. So what does Ferrari teach every business? The first lesson is that scarcity is a strategy, not a symptom. Most businesses treat scarcity as a problem to solve. Ferrari built it as the foundation of its competitive advantage. Controlling supply is one of the most powerful levers in brand building, and almost no company has the discipline to use it. The second lesson is that your brand promise is your most fragile asset. Ferrari's margins, its resale values above purchase price, its valuation higher than Hermes. None of this comes from manufacturing efficiency. It comes from a brand promise kept for 80 years. Every business collecting a premium price is collecting interest on a brand promise. Ferrari is a reminder that the principle can be called in at any time. The third lesson is the hardest. Tradition and innovation are not opposites. They are a tension that must be actively managed. Enzo thought road cars were a compromise. His successors turned that compromise into a $7 billion business. Marchionne thought an electric Ferrari was obscene. His successor is building one. The companies that survive generational disruptions know precisely which elements of their identity are essential and which are replaceable. For Ferrari, the roar of the V12 might be replaceable. The prancing horse is not. The question is whether its customers agree. If this story made you think differently about how brands are built, there is one thing you can do right now. Hit the like button. Drop a comment with what you think happens when that first electric Ferrari launches. Will it save the brand or begin to unravel it? I read every single comment. Subscribe because every Thursday I release a new deep dive exactly like this one. The brands that won, the brands that lost, and the decisions that made all the difference. I will see you next Thursday.